For those of you who don't know me, I'm a medical oncologist here in San Luis Obispo. I've been here about 22 years. I'm part of the French Hospital Cancer Committee, and so we are now recognized as a community oncology program by the American College of Surgeons, ACOS, and what's called their Committee on Cancer. As part of that organization, I act as the cancer liaison physician, and part of that role is interacting with the American Cancer Society. And through the American Cancer Society, one of their key goals is prevention. And I was able to attend a cancer prevention summit in Southern California a couple of years ago. This was before COVID. And that sort of really brought out the importance of vaccinations against HPV. It became really clear, and this was a couple of years ago, but at the time, vaccination for kids was really pretty low. We were somewhere in the 35 to 40% in California and really across the United States. And it was really clear that we could prevent a lot of cancer by getting children vaccinated. So that kind of led to starting what we call this HPV Free SLO, which was basically a think tank of people in San Luis Obispo through the health department, as well as pediatricians, family practice, and some of the gynecologists kind of getting together and saying, how do we do a better job about getting the message out about HPV vaccine? And it was really interesting because this was pre-COVID. And so there was a lot of vaccine hesitancy. And I think the understanding of vaccines and why they're important was maybe misunderstood. And I think, interestingly, COVID has really kind of changed that and probably changed the world in terms of the perception of vaccination. But anyways, that kind of led to my interest in HPV. And so I'm just going to kind of go through a talk that I've given a couple times in San Luis Obispo over the last couple of years. Hold on a second here. Just have to make the slide go. Okay. So these are just kind of some statistics. And this is basically kind of an updated stats from the CDC in the last couple of years, but approximately 46,000 HPV-associated cancers occur in the United States each year, 26,000 in women, which is mostly cervical cancer. And we're seeing a really almost an epidemic of oropharyngeal cancer, which is head and neck cancer. And so a lot of those occur in young men as well. And arguably, we have 14 million new unnecessary HPV infections per year in the United States. And that's basically people who are getting HPV who really shouldn't get it because, again, it's a preventable disease with the vaccination. And this is a virus, it's a wart virus that is contracted usually through sexual contact. And so most of these infections would occur in people who are in their teens and early 20s. Worldwide, there's probably about 600,000 or more HPV-associated cancers. Hold on, I'm trying to figure out how to move my slide. In a second. Trying to decide what button to push to make it go to the next slide. Oh. Hold on a second. I might have skipped this slide. Okay, so, but anyways, I think the importance of why I'm so excited about the potential to eradicate cancer by vaccinating people. It's really the first time ever that we could eradicate a certain type of cancer because it is a viral associated malignancy. If we can eliminate the virus, we can eliminate this type of cancer. Okay, so So the vaccine is called Gardasil 9, and it's indicated, the current indication is for both males and females, age 9 up to 45. And this has kind of changed over the years. Initially, when it came out in 2006, it was indicated for young women because we knew that was important to prevent cervical cancer. Currently, though, we know that it's important to vaccinate both young men and young women because of the risk of oropharyngeal squamous cell cancer of the head and neck. It's been very well studied and validated. It was approved in 2006, but studies were going on well before that. There's been well over 300 million doses given, and this has been looked at just because of the concern about vaccinating children. This has been looked at extensively, and there's really never been any evidence that this has caused harm, even though there's a lot of stuff on the internet that says that vaccines cause harm to children. This has been studied extensively, and really that is all just untrue. The idea of vaccinating, as we now know with COVID, is if you can vaccinate approximately 80% of a population, you develop herd immunity and essentially eradicate the virus. And in doing so, you would eradicate HPV-associated cancers. We recommend that children get vaccinated between ages of 9 to 12. And the question is why? And number one is you want to vaccinate them before they get exposed to HPV. But also equally important is that young kids seem to have a better immune response. And so by getting the vaccine in early, it seems to work better. Because of that, the recommendation has been that after age 15, 3 doses should be given. Like I was saying, when we started doing this a couple of years ago, we were estimating that the vaccination rates were 40%, and just this is between 2016 and 2020. You can see there's been a steady increase in acceptance of vaccine and getting kids vaccinated, so that currently it's estimated that kids aged 13 to 17 who've received all of the recommended vaccinations for HPV is about 60%. And the dot represents California and the square is United States, so California, for the most part, represents the United States. There's certainly some states that do better than other states. And there are certain counties in California that do better than others. If you try to look at reasons that we are not vaccinating our children, so again, arguably, if we're 60% is good, but that means 40% of children are not getting vaccinated. When people have done studies to look at why kids are not getting vaccinated, they did a lot of surveys with parents, and some of the common reasons that parents would say are, number one, that my kid is not sexually active. Number two, that this was not recommended by the pediatrician or the family practice provider. There have been concerns about the safety and side effects related to the vaccine. Some parents said, well, they didn't think it was needed or necessary, which a lot of that comes from the fact that it's not mandated by schools. And so a lot of times parents will come into the pediatrician and say, well, I just need to get the vaccines that my kids need for school. And then lastly, just really lack of knowledge. I think a lot of people don't understand that the reason for getting this vaccination is to prevent cancer. And this slide is a little bit complicated, but it's kind of showing the fact that the kids are getting vaccines. They're getting, for example, Tdap. So they're coming into the vaccinations, but they're not getting HPV. And again, for the reasons that it's not mandated, and like we said, some of the misunderstanding. And this slide, I think, is interesting, really just showing that it's not just the parents' fault, it's really the clinician's fault as well, and the fact that we underestimate the value that parents would place on an HPV vaccine. So this was just another survey estimating what people thought was the importance of getting it, and they really underestimated how important they thought parents would feel an HPV vaccine is for their kid. And then this was kind of an interesting study, because if you look at who gets vaccinated and the breakdown based on poverty level and racial inequities, which we all know about, Interestingly, for example, and this was in young females, but the Latina group had the highest vaccination rates. And interestingly, those people who whose children were below the poverty line, they had higher vaccination rates compared to those who were above the poverty line. So, you know, it's and there's different ways of trying to explain this, but essentially the wealthy white kids are the ones who are not getting vaccinated. So some of the myths and misunderstandings I think that are out there, especially on the internet, and why parents are not having their kids get vaccinated, is number one, that HPV is a sexually transmitted disease, and they say, well, my child is not having sex. And I'll go back to that other slide, but essentially the HPV is the wart virus. It's the same virus that causes warts on hands, on your hands. It's a different variant that causes the cancer, but it basically is passed from human to human by human contact. And the thought that, well, my kid's not sexually active, that really doesn't matter, because we still want to vaccinate children before they're sexually active. So we obviously don't want to vaccinate sexually active kids. We want to vaccinate kids who are not sexually active. And that's because that's when the immune system is most capable of developing lifelong antibody response. You know, there was some thought, you know, there's a lot of stuff saying, well, pharmaceutical companies are just making money with this. I thought it was interesting, and I kind of just made this slide up myself, because I know that when we treat cervical cancer, head and neck cancer, we are using drugs that are extremely expensive. And you know, if your strategy was to make money, you would probably say, let's let everybody get cancer. We'll make more money that way. So anyways, that I thought was kind of interesting. I kind of thought that, again, if we could raise awareness and do a better job in our county, we could get to that 80% vaccination rate. And that really is the goal. I think that's the goal across California. It's the goal across the United States. Part of our HPV-free SLOW organization was to put together think tanks and pilot programs to see if, as a county, we could get to 80%. And, you know, how do we do that? We just have to educate people, change the cultural mindset, combat all the social media misinformation that's out there. And I would think that because we're San Luis Obispo, we could be a model for other counties in California. I'm missing a few slides here. Let me go back here. So you know, so I did say we're doing a better job, and how is that? I think we're doing a better job with the education. This is an information piece that came out when the FDA raised the age to 45, and that just kind of made it easier. It's like, you know, it seemed like for a while it was pretty complicated whether, you know, do you give it to your boys, do you give it to girls, what age do they get it? And really, it's for people who really have a low risk of having been exposed to the virus already, then it's worth getting the vaccination. For most adults, if they've had exposure and contact with other people, they're probably not going to benefit from the vaccine. This was another information piece that just said, trying to make it simple. So basically for kids age 11 to 12, if they haven't been vaccinated, they should get vaccinated. And this was kind of a little algorithm that just kind of made it easier for parents and for pediatricians. This came out just last week, and I thought it was kind of interesting. So currently, as I was saying, the current FDA recommendation is that you know, the kids, both boys and girls, should be vaccinated probably in the age 9 to 12 group with 2 vaccinations. If you wait past age 15, then they recommend 3 vaccinations, which should be given about 6 months apart. And part of the issue is compliance. Is just, you know, it's when kids are in there being seen by the pediatrician, they'll get their vaccine, but they often don't come back for the second or the third. And on the world stage, they've done some studies looking at, what if you just get one? Is one better than nothing? And the answer is yes, it probably is. It's not our current recommendations in the United States, but the World Health Organization, and they have what's called the Strategic Advisory Group of Experts. They came out just about 2 weeks ago with the statement that they feel that one dose of an HPV vaccine offers solid protection against cervical cancer. And so in a sense, kind of saying, well, even if you're not going to get all three, it probably is that one is better than none. Although, again, the recommendations are still 2 for the younger kids and 3 if you're over 15, going all the way up to age 45. Let's see what else I've got here. This was on my slide, somebody bounced around. So why is it not mandated? And this is a political issue that kind of gets bounced around quite a bit in California. There are a lot of people politically connected who are against vaccinating or mandating vaccinations, even though, as everybody knows, there are vaccinations that are required to go to school. Some states do require vaccinations. Rhode Island is kind of the leader. They have the highest vaccination rates in their kids and they're up around 80% or so. We think that this probably will change as there is more education and more acceptance of the HPV vaccine. This was an information piece for parents, is to say, when should you put the seatbelt on your child? And is it before you turn on the car, leaving the driveway, after an accident? And again, the message here is to say that you should vaccinate your kids before they become sexually active. Same thing with the helmet idea. When do you put a helmet on your kid? Before they get on their bike, when they're riding down the street, or after, eventually after a car hits them. And so the message again being that there's an opportunity here to prevent a cancer in your child at this point in their life. And if you wait, then you miss that opportunity. HPV vaccine is cancer prevention. Talk to your doctor about vaccinating your 11, 12-year-old sons and daughters. Evidence-based HPV disease prevention. There's also, I have one other thing to show you. This just came out. This was a TV ad that is recently come out. I'll just play this for you guys too.
Stones like this may start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own, but for others, it can cause certain cancers later in life. Welcome. Hi. Now, as the dad cab, it's my cue to help protect them.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next. Ask their doctor about HPV vaccination today.
So anyway, so that kind of stuff is now becoming more, and it's kind of difficult. I think Merck has a lot of trouble trying to get their message out just because of the negativity about vaccinations. But in any event, we are doing better, and I think that's kind of what the statistics show, is that slowly we're improving, and that it is about getting information out there to parents and getting kids vaccinated at the right age. And that's kind of what I was going to talk about. I mean, we can talk more about cancers if you guys are interested. I think I'd like to open it up for questions and see what you guys have in terms of thoughts about how we could do a better job of vaccinating our county, and recognizing that this is really sort of the low-hanging fruit on the cancer prevention spectrum. I mean, it's easy to say don't smoke, but just to say you're going to go in and get one vaccine when your kid is young and prevent really some terrible cancers that could develop later in life. To me, I think of it as low-hanging fruit on the cancer prevention spectrum.